Have you ever argued with someone about something that you care deeply about and something that you know a lot about, but the other person doesn't care very much about it and they don't know very much about it? It's frustrating. It is frustrating. And you feel like they should care about this thing and they should learn more about it. You may even feel that they have a responsibility to acquire more knowledge about this thing. Welcome to ToK Today. I'm Daniel, and today I want to give you an overview of ToK Essay Prompt number 1, November 24. That's the responsibility to acquire knowledge. Does it vary by area of knowledge? Now, if you don't know or understand what could be meant by acquire knowledge, or you don't understand what the responsibility to acquire knowledge is, then make sure that you watch our Covering the Basics video about this essay title, linked above. In this video, we're just going to jump straight into the question, does the responsibility to acquire knowledge vary by AOK? And if you want detailed help and guidance on this essay, make sure that you pick up the ToK Today essay guidance notes for this title from the ToK Today website, link in the video description. So we're going to start with 3 broad reasons or areas why the responsibility to acquire knowledge could vary according to area of knowledge. They are, firstly, the scope and purpose and application of the area of knowledge. Secondly, the contextual responsibilities of the knower within this area of knowledge. And thirdly, the methods and tools used by the area of knowledge. Now, these are very broad areas, and you probably wouldn't cover all 3 in one ToK essay. But let me take just a moment just to explain each one in a little more detail. So, the scope, purpose, and application of the area of knowledge are defined by the knowledge framework of the AOK, which can be found in the ToK study guide. The scope is the definition of the area of knowledge, the boundaries of the area of knowledge, and the purpose is the reasons for which knowledge is produced within the area of knowledge, and the application is how knowledge is used within the area of knowledge. All of these things are open to lots of debate and give rise to lots of lovely knowledge arguments that you can use in your essay. Now, the second one, the responsibilities of the knower, can be thought of as the ethical and moral obligations and duties that the knower has that are specific to this area of knowledge. For example, imagine going to see a doctor, and you ask the doctor, so what's wrong with me, doctor? And the doctor replies, well, I'm not really sure what's wrong with you because I didn't pay very much attention when I was in medical school. Now, you might be rather upset, and you could conclude, but you have a responsibility to acquire medical knowledge because you're a doctor. Now, with the second one, I've put the word contextual in brackets, and that's because those responsibilities may be contextually specific. That means that they apply in some contexts, but not in others. You may say that a knower in context A has more responsibility to acquire knowledge about a particular AOK than a knower in context B has. Context is such a wonderful concept. It gives so much opportunity for lovely, rich knowledge arguments. I love the concept of context. It may be my favourite ToK concept, even though it's not even one of the 12 core concepts. But let's move on. Let's move on to our third and final understanding of responsibility to acquire knowledge. And this is that the responsibility to acquire knowledge may vary according to AOK because of the methods and tools used to acquire knowledge. Now, we need to be a little careful here to keep the focus on the knower acquiring knowledge rather than on the knowledge producer producing knowledge. However, if you imagine a situation in which a knower takes action based on a rumour that they've read on Twitter, now known as X, the method of acquisition may not be deemed as reliable nor objective as an academic research paper, for example. So you get the idea that there are these 3 broad ways that we can think of the responsibility to acquire knowledge as varying according to AOK. And from these 3 broad ways, we can extract loads of little knowledge arguments, loads of big and little knowledge arguments that you could use in this essay. And what we're now going to do is we're going to take one of these broad knowledge arguments and we're going to get a real life example from it, and we're going to look at AOK history. But before we do that, let me just say that if these very broad knowledge arguments have clarified anything for you, or if they've piqued your interest, then you may want to pick up the detailed essay guidance notes from ToK today. In those notes, we go into various knowledge arguments, the knowledge arguments coming from each of these broad areas. We look at real-life examples to illustrate those knowledge arguments, and we look at evaluation and implication points, the sort of points you need to get top scores. In the notes, there's essentially everything that you need to get a great score on the ToK essay. And those notes are over 8,400 words just for essay 1. So they're like a mini textbook for essay 1. Okay, let's have a look at a more specific example for AOK history, and we're going to start with the knowledge claim that the responsibility to acquire knowledge may vary by AOK depending upon the knower's context. Yeah, back to context. Now, before we get into the details of that claim, let's look at the real-world example just to make it clearer. In 2014, the then UK Secretary of State for Education, Mr. Michael Gove, caused controversy by rewriting the history curriculum in the United Kingdom, making the teaching of the history of black people in the UK and its former empire optional. Now, this real-life example, which is linked in the video description, gives us a wide range of knowledge arguments from which we can draw. But we're going to focus on Mr. Gove as our knower. He may have more responsibility to acquire knowledge about history than about other AOKs because of his then context as being in charge of the history that was taught in schools in the United Kingdom. We could argue that a knower who has power or influence over other knowers to form their beliefs of the knowledge communities to which they belong has more responsibility to acquire historical knowledge than they have to acquire knowledge from other areas of knowledge such as maths or the natural sciences. In this scenario, the power to influence the beliefs of knowledge communities is the context, and it's that context that leads to the responsibility to acquire knowledge varying by AOK. Further, we could argue that this influential knower has more responsibility to acquire knowledge from AOK history than knowers who have little or no influence over others' sense of identity and belonging. Now, it's a fairly straightforward knowledge argument to make, and it nicely touches on the scope of AOK history, the purpose of historical knowledge, and the ethical responsibilities arising from historical knowledge. And I'm sure that you can find parallel examples from the country in which you live or study. Now, of course, there are also a wide range of evaluation points that we could develop from this knowledge claim, and you need to put in evaluation points and implication points to get a high score in the ToK essay. Just before I get into those evaluation points, I'd just like to point out that some students are still using the term counterclaim. Now, this is a term that we used to use widely in ToK, but in recent years the examiners have asked us to replace the idea of a counterclaim with the idea of evaluation points. Evaluation points allow for a more nuanced exploration of the claim. And whilst I remember, please hit like and subscribe if this video is useful. It really helps me out, and it's a free and easy way for you to give back a little to the channel. Thank you. Okay, here are some evaluation points for the claim the responsibility to acquire knowledge may vary by AOK depending upon the knower's context. First of all, this claim takes a very AOK-specific approach to knowledge. Knowledge linked to context may not be specific to AOK history, nor to any other AOK, but it might be drawn from across all of the AOKs. To go back to our history curriculum example, the knowledge that goes into the history curriculum is drawn from and influenced by AOK the human sciences, AOK the arts, AOK the natural sciences, and so on and so on. Second evaluation point. We could argue that all knowers have a responsibility to interrogate all knowledge, regardless of their context or the AOK from which the knowledge comes. Now, this argument is based on the premise that the context of a knower is fluid, it's hybrid, it's layered. And as such, we can't develop uniform, standardized rules for the acquisition of knowledge based on context. In terms of our history curriculum example, it's not just that Michael Gove, as a knower, has extra responsibility to acquire knowledge from AOK history, but it's that all knowers have responsibility to acquire knowledge from AOK history and from all of the other AOKs. Now, obviously, we could go on and on developing these evaluation points, but I know that you're a busy DP student and I've got other ToK videos to make. So if you want to know more about how to write evaluation points, check out my video Evaluation in ToK Essays, linked above. Hopefully from this overview video you get some ideas for how to approach this essay. There are of course many other ways to develop this essay, some of which we go into in a lot more detail in the ToK Today essay guidance notes, link in the video description. Thank you for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe. ToK Today has videos for all of the other ToK essay titles and for many of the ToK exhibition titles, so tell your friends all about us. Stay ToKtastic, my friends.